Listen up, y'all. I'm here to talk to you about games. I heard you like them. Game Freak likes them so much they called themselves Game Freak. And they started implementing games within the games. Yes, Pokemon games are primarily known for their collect and battle gameplay, which makes complete sense. That's like 90% of the core experience. But whatever happened to all the other stuff that you could do along the way? So good morning, everybody. Good morning, it's JPR, and today let's explore the rise and fall of Pokemon's minigames. The first minigame featured in the core series was Pikachu's Beach, exclusive to Pokemon Yellow version. In this minigame, the player uses the Game Boy's control pad to make Pikachu flip over the wave, scoring points for radness. Oh, 1990s, how I love you. With Pokemon Yellow being a tie-in to the Pokemon anime, this minigame appears to have been a pre-planned connection between the game and episode 67 of the anime, the Pika-Huna. Yep, Pokemon Yellow couldn't give Blaine and Magmar to match the anime, but they could plan months ahead to tie into a random filler episode. Priorities, I guess. Surfing Pikachu is pretty marketable and rad, as they say, as Surfing Pikachu has popped up throughout various media over time since its debut in 1998, so it's safe to say this minigame that had nothing to do with Pokemon battling ended up being pretty memorable and influential. So much so that in 1999, Pokemon Stadium launched with not one, not two, but 9 minigames included. You know, a game that's supposed to be a battle simulator? The minigames are arguably more memorable to most 90s kids. Unfortunately, I am a 90s baby, not a 90s kid. Yes, there's a difference. So I can't really be asked about this time frame. But from everybody I've spoken to, yes, the minigames were quite rad. But within only a few years of Pokemon existing, they were already starting to show off through multiple avenues that there was more to the franchise than just catching and battling. Probably because PETA was breathing down their necks about animal cruelty back then. Haha, see, my electric rat knows how to surf and totally isn't just being used for street fights, isn't that wholesome? But over time, the Pokemon minigames would evolve and become much more intricate, with perhaps the most notable example coming in Generation 3 with the advent of Pokemon contests. In all honesty, it almost feels kinda disingenuous to call these minigames because they certainly felt like so much more. Pokemon contests weren't just a simple sprite being controlled with basic movements like the surfing Pikachu. Rather, it was a complete reinvention of the way that your Pokemon and their moves worked in the same turn-based style the players were already familiar with. Some Generation 3 Pokemon and the attacks they learn are even more suited for contests than they are for battling, such as Delcatty or Castform. Powder Snow sucks in the main game, but in contests, it's a rare but valuable tool used to score massive beauty points. It's actually kinda genius because it gives a whole lot of value to moves that you would normally delete as soon as you get new ones. I used to have 5 separate Pokemon in my boxes who were spec'd for each individual contest type instead of battling, and that felt like it added a ton of depth to the game. But even outside of the contests themselves, they were able to tie in another minigame through Pokeblock mixing, and later in Gen 4, Poffin cooking. Contests became so integral to the experience that they lasted 2 whole generations, spawned their own host of minigames like cooking, dancing, and dress-up, and even served as the basis for 2 of the anime's most beloved protagonists. I mean, you could say 3, and let's be honest, Serena basically does contests too. Building your own side career as a contest star and collecting all the ribbons for your Pokemon felt almost, if not more gratifying than getting all the gym badges for many people. Also in this time frame, we got the wireless adapter minigames for Fire Red and Leaf Green, which I personally never played, but I guess they look fun. And even the Underground from Sinnoh I would say fits into this category. Gem mining, trap setting, capture the flag? Yeah, these are all minigames, and pretty dang fun ones at that. No Pokemon even required for this one. And when we thought it couldn't get any better, Heart Gold and Soul Silver delivered with their own version of the Pokemon Olympics, the Pokeathlon. Words cannot describe how much time and effort I poured into the Pokeathlon, and your efforts would be rewarded. With points to exchange for evolution items, a room full of your own personal records, and even a Pokeathlon Hall of Fame that I bet most players never even unlocked. For being a remake-exclusive series of minigames, there's a surprising amount of effort that went into them. 5 specialized series, just like contests, with 10 individual minigames. Now, admittedly, not all of them are bangers. I would personally live a perfectly okay life if I never touched pennant capture ever again, but most of them are pretty competent and charming minigames. In typical Johto fashion, even the days of the week and your Pokemon's natures play into how good their stats are on a particular day. The depth, man! The depth! So, naturally, after receiving upgraded and enhanced contests in Sinnoh and a whole Pokemon Sporting League in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, people were eager for what was next to come. And, well, Pokemon Musical should have been the first sign of trouble. Essentially just being contests, but without the ribbons, and the gameplay, or literally any other reason to ever do them. This is one of the only areas in Gen 5 where I can confidently say, they kinda fumbled on this one. But thankfully, it wouldn't be Gen 5's only minigame. They also introduced the Entralink and Dreamworld, which had their own minigames, although almost all of them were either multiplayer focused or been shut down by Nintendo sometime in the last decade. So they weren't really designed with the same staying power as Contest or Pokeathlon. However, Black 2 and White 2 would try their hand with a new single-player series of minigames, Pokestar Studios. To which I can say, it's better than musicals. Admittedly, I never did all of Pokestar Studios. I tried many times, but it just never really had the hook to me. I think part of it is just that most of the time you're required to use rental Pokemon, and there's always a set script for what has to happen in order to achieve a good ending. And a lot of times, especially in more advanced movies, getting these endings requires a lot of good luck, like landing critical hits or inflicting certain status conditions. And with some movies requiring dozens of reshots, I know, that's what real life is like, it really doesn't feel like compelling gameplay. I'll give them credit, they tried. Like other areas of Black 2 and White 2, there is a ton of content here to sink your teeth into. And some of the movie references and even little cameos from characters like Bryson and Sabrina are fun, just not fun enough to make me want to do all of it. But one thing that is fun is subscribing to this channel so you'll never miss a new video. It's free! But if trouble started brewing at Gen 5, by Gen 6, it was clear that minigames were entering life support territory. There was no longer any sort of side career to engage in. You couldn't be an athlete, you couldn't be an idol, you couldn't be a chef, you couldn't even be whatever the heck Pokemon musicals wanted you to be. Rather, all of Gen 6's minigames are contained within the bottom screen features, which makes them feel very separated from the world of the game. Pokemon Ami features a few basic minigames, and these are actual minigames. Tile Puzzle, which is as basic as it gets. Berry Picker, which I can't even find gameplay of on YouTube, so I can't even remember what that's about. Good luck, editor. And Head It, which feels like the most diet version of a Pokeathlon minigame. Of course, there's also Super Training, which actually makes EV training fun, until you realize it's still far from the fastest way to gain EVs in Pokemon X and Y. Again, it's nice that X and Y have these features, but I don't think they're at all comparable to what we had at the beginning the last 3 generations. Now, to Game Freak's credit, it was revealed in the Terra leak that they did plan to have a Mario Kart-style Rhyhorn racing career, with multiple tracks that you could visit throughout the Kalos region. But it was scrapped about halfway through development. Which, man, I felt so vindicated when this was finally discovered. I always felt like with your mom being a Rhyhorn racer, you literally riding a Rhyhorn early in the game, and a leftover Rhyhorn racing track being visible on Route 18, that Rhyhorn racing was always meant to be a feature in X and Y. It really bums me out that this got cut, but I understand. This sounds like a much larger undertaking than some of Pokemon's previous minigames. In many facets, X and Y just seem like they were a little too ambitious for their own good. At the very least, Gen 6's other pair of games, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, predictably resurrected Pokemon contests and gave them way more of a new coat of paint than I think most people expected. We got Cosplay Pikachu, basically beta Z-moves as finales, and an entire side plot storyline revolving around Lizia. It was genuinely really cool content. The only thing that sucked was that the Pokeblock minigame was sadly cut for a much faster blender key item. Man, this is nice and all, but sometimes you gotta understand that vibes transcend convenience. But overall, despite this one exclusion, I think contests were handled pretty well in ORAS. But sadly, Gen 7 would be even drier than what X and Y had prepared us for, as the Pokefinder feature on Rotom is basically the only real minigame to be found. It's like they heard fans demanding a Pokemon Snap remake and they said, "Here, have a camera you'll play with for 15 minutes. I did like the troll comments that would pop up though, it kinda reminds me of being a YouTuber. Now, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon did add Mantine surfing, which I'm a little bit split on. I like Mantine surfing because it adds a feeling of connectedness between the islands. I never really liked how the only way to travel between islands in Sun and Moon was flying on Charizard or going on a ferry just to experience a loading screen. This makes the Alola region feel more immersive and alive, and it means that you'll enjoy your minigame while traveling to the island that you want to go to at the same time. What's not so great is that it's just a massive points grind to get nothing really that cool. There's no ribbons or cool unlockables to make you feel like you need to keep going, like in the old career stuff. And the gameplay is a little lacking. There's only a few moves you can perform, and most of them aren't unlocked until later. Though, fittingly, for getting top score on every course, you do get a Surfing Pikachu, which feels like a cool homage to the original surfing minigame. And it's fitting that this is where we come full circle on this topic, because Generations 8 and 9 have no minigames at all to speak of, at least in the base games. Yeah, Ogre Oustin is a minigame, but again, isn't really one with a ton of depth or much to do with your own Pokemon. Sure, these games also have cooking curry and making sandwiches, but in all honesty, these just feel like X and Y minigames. They're still not really what I'm looking for. It's fine that it's here, but it doesn't really feel like it's enhancing the experience or adding depth to the world. Yeah, you can feed your animals, I would certainly hope so. But things like Pokemon contests, Pokeathlon, and yes, even Pokemon musicals show how people in Pokemon interact in completely different and unexpected ways. It makes the world feel more alive and interesting because there's more to do with these creatures than just collect and battle them. And okay, yeah, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl once again brought back contests, but unlike in the Hoenn remakes, this time it felt like they did it only because they had to. The contest experience is basically boiled down to a single, pretty uninteresting rhythm game. It doesn't have nearly the same mix of appeal, skill, and strategy that the old Sinnoh contest did. Even the Underground, when it was finally brought back, lost most of its charm it used to have because the digging feature was the only part that the remake retained. We even lost the Game Corner, which I guess isn't really their fault. Part of me almost wonders if the disappearance of traditional minigames in Pokemon has to do with their grand scheme of pushing out as many mobile games as possible. I mean, Pokemon Friends is basically a compilation of kids' games that could have very easily been added to a core series game. Did I mention it has paid DLC? Or maybe it's just Game Freak realizing that they don't need to invest time into these miniature features that most kids will forget about in a few years because these games will still sell 30 million copies even if they're unfinished. Oop, did I say that out loud? Anyway, I'm going to Pokemon Worlds this weekend and I don't want to have my badge revoked, so I think this is a good place to end the video. If you're in the Anaheim area, be sure to come by my meet and greet on Sunday, August 17th. I'd love to meet you. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.